Hey everybody, I'm at Paynes Creek Historic State Park in Bowling Green, Florida. We're having a Civil War reenactment here called Fort Chokonikla. It's a reenactment for March 7th through the 8th, 2020 here. They have two of them each day. It's going to happen in about 20 minutes or so. I'm lucky I got here just in time for the one today. But they have vendors, they have like reenactment camps here. You can look up people in period clothing and all that. So I'm quite excited. You can see me okay. A little cool out today, but not too bad. I'm going to get out, walk around, and show you some things for the reenactment, maybe a little bit after. Quite excited to be here. I like stuff like this. Alright, let's get going. Here's where they're going to have the reenactment right here. They have bleachers for you to sit.
Very unsettled after that, so they kind of settled down.
I think I might imagine there's some food vendors. And some places, some other vendors they sell stuff at, you know. Let's check this out.
Okay.
How did they come up with the flints back in 1840?
They dug them out of the ground, they mined them, and they made them themselves. Now the Indians, I'll pick that up later. We would always nap one side sharp. The Indians, they would take a piece of square flint and they would nap all four sides. So when one side wore out, they turn it around.
That makes sense.
But they were expert nappers. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. It's a bigger one, you can see it better. They would nap all four sides because they were expert nappers, and then they would just, when it wore out, they'd get 4 times more shots at it. What else, guys? I'm listening.
What's this?
That's a flyer for the frontiersmen.
What's that?
This holds patches. When you shoot a rifle, you have to patch the ball. I got a bullet in here somewhere. No, it's not there. I'll find it.
Those are there.
Okay, when you shoot a rifle, you have to put a patch behind the ball to make it accurate. So this is my patching material. So instead of, this is one way to do it, but if I didn't have one of these, I would hang this around my neck and I could pull my patching out, put the ball on it, push it through, cut the patch to size. That way I didn't have to dig around in my bag for a pouch, for a patch.
What kind of animal skin is this?
This is a raccoon. It's a raccoon. Do you touch it? It's a raccoon.
I thought it was a skunk.
Nope, not a skunk. Skunks are black and white. This is a raccoon.
Which is your favorite item out of all of these and why?
Where do you
My
live?
favorite item out of all of these and why?
Yeah, or one of your favorites.
The one, okay, I'll tell you the one I use the most. I actually use the most, and that's probably would be close to my favorite, is I use this one more than any other tool on the table. I use it for everything. It's like my pocket knife. So yeah, this is the one I use the most.
What kind of animal is this?
That's a deer. That's a white-tailed deer hide.
Where do you live?
I live in Avon Park.
How long would it take you to load those, and how accurate were they?
These?
Yeah.
These were not, they were about a 7-yard, 10-yard firearm. They're rifled. The sights are primitive. They go about 7 to 10 yards accuracy-wise. They're not very accurate at all. I'm sure if you practiced and practiced, we have guys in our club that shoot competition. We shoot at 25 and 50 yards with them. So they're accurate out to 50 yards. It takes a lot of practice though because they're heavy. They're not balanced very well and the sights are really not that great.
And how long would it take to load them?
The pistols, I really couldn't tell. I've never really timed myself. I don't know. You know, I couldn't tell you.
And what about these? How accurate were these?
This is a smoothbore trade gun. It's a 62 caliber smoothbore trade gun. It loads real quick because it's a smoothbore. This one is good after about 50, 75 yards. This is a 36 caliber rifle. This one's good out to 300, 400 yards.
And what kind of ammo would these two take?
Round ball. both take round ball. This takes round ball. This takes round ball or shot.
And is that the same for those?
No, these take round ball. They're rifled as well. They're rifled barrels, which means they spin. So.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
What would you keep in here?
This, my persona is a retired surveyor. So what I have in here would be one of the most expensive things I own. Mr. Jim here was playing with it a little earlier. It's my compass. And it's a compass, it's a sundial, and it's a protractor. Y'all remember when we did the class with the compass? This is the compass we use, remember?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what it is.
And that's period accurate?
It would be period accurate, yes sir.
And how much would that cost back in the day?
Oh, back in the day, this probably would have sent me back 12 bucks, which was a lot of money back in the 1800s.
And what about now?
Now, how much did I pay for it now? About $27, I don't remember. Yes,
What's this?
this holds balls. This holds my balls, lead balls. As soon as I get them all shot, I'm never going to put them back in here again. But they hold lead balls.
And maybe
just
if
like
you
this
make
one.
another one, make the novel a little bigger.
Well, that was given to me with the balls already in it.
Oh.
But let me show you something about lead. How many of you all know lead is poison?
Yes.
Okay, let me explain something to you about lead. See this lead ball? This lead ball isn't poison. See these lead balls?
They're poison.
What's the difference?
That's darker and is most likely hardened.
Well, this one dear isn't oxidized. There's no lead oxide on it. The lead oxide, which is this white powder, that's what's poison.
So on pencils, they aren't poison?
The ones that are not white powder, they're not poison. The ones with the white powder is what's poison.
So that would be basically poisonous bullet.
Yes. Well, the white powder is definitely, if you put your fingers in your mouth or you put in a cup of water and drink it, you'll get really bad sick. But I'm not worried about these because I'm going to shoot these all next week. But when they're shiny like this, they're not. They're just lead.
Now, why do they use lead? Was it because it's more common or it's cheaper?
Soft, it was cheap, it was common,
And also,
and it was easy to mold, easy to melt, and just easier to use in general. But they used other things. During the Battle of Concord, during the Revolutionary War, the women were melting down their pewter cups and pewter dishes to balls. So it was what they had at the time. It was soft and easy to melt, melted quick and cooled quick. Because when we use our mold to make balls, we pour the hot lead in here, and we don't want to wait 20 minutes for it to cool. So it cools in like 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, and we got a ball. So lead melts quick, cools quick, is soft. So one of the reasons being soft like it is, when it hits an animal, like I'm going to kill a heavy boned animal, when it hits the animal, it might be 45 caliber round when it hits the animal, but once it starts hitting resistance, it gets bigger. And it gives a bigger wound channel. So it's quick, it kills the animal quicker too.
That was very interesting. There's some camps over there. There's one of the food vendors. There's some vendors selling like souvenirs too. This isn't as big as the Battle in Arcosi Mill was, smaller, but I like it still. We get over there and sit soon, but they'll start the actual reenactment. That's the main thing I'm here for.
Where are you from originally?
I almost thought that deer was real, but it is not.
It is. I grew up in Longwood. All right. December the 13th of 31. I weigh 3 pounds and 1 ounce. Oh, I haven't caught up yet.
Oh, the fee to get in here, it's only $3 for the car, then $2 per person. Just to let you know. Some of the vendors that you could buy stuff from. Oh, there's stuff. restrooms in case you're interested. Like I said, especially kind of basically recreation of the whole fort. There was an actual fort here, and I'll get more information at the end about the fort and the battle and everything. First, I just want to film this. Okay. I think I'm going to sit down and wait for the reenactment. And I'll do some more filming after. Just waiting for the calm before the storm, everyone.
Make it take $15. It's not for little kids.
Creek Historic State Park for our annual commemoration of the attack on the trading post in 1849. And this battle is going to be dedicated to Mr. Elvin Myron Hodges, a longtime supporter of the park, who passed away recently, and we're here to simply say thank you and to dedicate this event to him and his memory. Good afternoon. My name is John Missel. I'm a Seminole War historian. My wife and I have a booth when you come first in through the gate there. If you need any information on the wars, like to learn a bit more about it, come by and see us. On August 14th, 1842, Colonel William Jenkins Worth declared an end to the Second Seminole War. For 7 long years, the Seminole had fought for the right to live in their homeland. But by the end of the war, only a few hundred of these brave and tenacious people remained in Florida. Thousands of their brethren had been forcibly evicted to reservations in what is now Oklahoma. Those few who were still in Florida were determined never to leave the place of their birth. It was an uneasy truce. Because the Seminole had fought so hard for so long, they had become one of the most feared tribes in the nation. Leaders such as Osceola and Coacachee had become legendary, and the ferocity of the Seminole warriors had taken on mythic proportions. For those white officials who were attempting to promote the settlement of Florida, the presence of these celebrated warriors proved a significant problem. Settlers would not make their homes in a land where they couldn't feel safe. Yet conflict with their neighbors was the last thing the Seminole wanted. The long years of warfare had forced them from their comfortable homes in the north of the peninsula and into the inhospitable Everglades. Many whites believed the Indians would starve to death in the harsh conditions of the swamp, but the highly adaptable Seminole had made the wetlands of South Florida their home and were learning to thrive where no one else could. For these people, the best way to avoid being driven from the land was to avoid the whites as much as possible. Total avoidance of their white neighbors would prove impossible. In the rich grasslands near the Peace River and north of Lake Okeechobee, the Seminole grazed their cattle. On the same prairies, white cattlemen fed their own herds, and friction was inevitable. Land speculators with visions of large communities and huge profits wanted to sell off the southern portion of the peninsula to land-hungry settlers. Plantation owners wanted to expand their holdings and spread the institution of slavery deeper into Florida. For all these people, the Seminole were an obstacle that needed to be removed. As much as the Seminole hoped to avoid their white neighbors, they also needed them. The Stone Age Native American culture that had first greeted European settlers had vanished, replaced by one that was dependent upon factory-produced goods. Rifles and steel knives replaced the bow and arrow. Metal cookpots had replaced ceramic pottery, and clothing was made from factory woven cloth. For the Seminole Indians, trade with the whites was a necessity. Understanding this reality, the government had authorized the firm of Kennedy and Darling to erect a trading post on the shores of Charlotte Harbor. A hurricane in 1848 destroyed the trading post, and it was decided to build a new one farther inland, closer to the Seminole villages. A small creek that emptied into the Peace River was chosen as the site, and Captain George Payne was put in charge of the store. He hired Dempsey Whidden as an assistant, along with Whidden's brother-in-law, William McCullough, and McCullough's wife, Nancy. With the couple was their 7-month-old daughter, Elizabeth. On the afternoon of July 17, 1849, the Seminole leader known as Chipko came to the post, accompanied by several Seminole women.
Got some visitors here, Nancy. See that? See what they got. Hello. Howdy. Come on in. Chipko. Women come for visit. Come trade. Welcome. And many fine deer hides. Other hides. Honey. Check them out. Oranges. Alligator skin. Honey. You gotta stop sometime? Sweet. Got here, you got one? Rifle. That coat looks an awful lot. That likes mine. No, that's my coat. It's gonna get cold. Yeah. Get back. Come on. Get back. Come on. Whoa. You come back before then. Bring back. More. Good trade. Too good. Once again, we lose out on. We lost the deal.
After the departure of Chipko and the women, William and Nancy McCullough went about the work of preparing the evening meal. Sometime after the departure of Chipko and the women, several warriors arrived at the store, claiming to have a large number of skins to trade.
Write that off at the law.
We got some more visitors here.
More visitors. Well,
Not the same.
they're not going to find me as friendly as the last group.
This change.
Hello.
Don't go.
What you got?
We have skin.
Hope they're good. Yes, not bad. Not bad at all. We have many skins across the river.
Need boat.
We need boats to bring over. Had not tonight. Dinner about ready? Dinner's ready.
Mini skins.
Okay, we're gonna go inside and eat.
This is just small.
In the morning, we'll go get your first.
Much bigger.
Okay? Okay. Have whiskey? No whiskey.
We camp here?
You can camp here. No, outside. Got a fire right there. Right around the fire. We'll talk. Did you bring food? If you brought your food, you can eat your food. We don't have enough to share. Stay by fire. See you in the morning.
In the morning.
In the morning.
We'll get this.
We just got robbed. So I'm not going to cook.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a bad feeling. We need the skins.
As the merchants enter the cabin for their meal, the warriors appear to be relaxing. What the storekeepers are unaware of is that the same group of Indians has recently attacked a farm in Fort Pierce and killed the occupant. Concealed from the view of their intended victims, the warriors load their rifles.
Why not? Keeps it interesting.
The Indians burst into the cabin and immediately kill Captain Payne and Dempsey Whidden. William and Nancy McCullough grab the baby and flee out the back of the cabin. The warriors fire on the McCulloughs, wounding both William and Nancy. One of the warriors goes off in pursuit, while the others loot and set fire to the store. The McCulloughs, both wounded and with the infant in their arms, hide out in the woods and elude their pursuer. After 3 days' arduous journey, they arrive at the safety of a relative's home, some 25 miles away from the scene of the attack. News of the murder spreads quickly through the thinly settled frontier. Fearing a general Indian uprising, settlers throughout Florida flee their homes and gather at the Army outposts for protection. The government sends in hundreds of troops, and a string of forts is erected across the peninsula. One of those fortifications is erected a half a mile from the scene of the killings and is called Fort Chokonikla, Seminole for burnt store. Major William Morris and 3 companies of the 4th Army Artillery Regiment arrive at the site in October 1849 and immediately begin construction. War appears imminent. Yet the Seminoles do not want war. As the fort neared completion in January 1850, Chief Billy Bowlegs came to the fort for a conference. He insisted the murderers were outlaws and had carried out the actions without the knowledge or consent of the tribe. To preserve the peace, he offered to capture the outlaws and turn them over to the white authorities. This he does, bringing to Fort Brooke at Tampa the captured murderers and the severed hand of one of those who had killed trying to escape. An uneasy peace settles over Florida. No battles ever took place at Fort Chokonikla, and instead of fighting Indians, the soldiers battled boredom and illness. Many of the soldiers succumbed to malaria and yellow fever, prompting the surgeon to recommend the immediate evacuation of Fort Chokonikla. On July 18, 1850, the troops were transferred to Fort Meade. Peace on the frontier did not last, and pressure continued for the Seminoles to emigrate to Oklahoma. They adamantly refused, and in December of 1855, war once again breaks out. For 2.5 years, the Army invades the Seminole homeland, searching for the hidden villages and destroying everything they can find.
Fits, don't it? You missed me.
What'd you say?
Is that what that means?
I don't know. They're talking too many. The soldiers stay out in the open. Neither one hit anybody.
Considering they're using muskets, you got a problem with it. Send inside the barn. They had no.
Got one.
In March 1858, Billy Bowlegs at last agrees to emigrate, and with him go over 150 of his followers. Yet there are a handful of Seminole that will never surrender. They remain hidden deep within the Everglades and become the ancestors of all the Seminole who live in Florida today. Please remain seated as the reenactors come out and form up to fire a salute to all those who have fallen in defense of the homeland they love. At this time, we'd like to thank our sponsors, State Farm Insurance, Mosaic Company, Peace River Electric Cooperative, Ace Hardware, First National Bank, City of Bowling Green, and the City of Wauchula. We'd also very much like to thank, and would you please give a hand to our reenactors. They're all volunteers. They don't get paid for this. They put a lot of dedication into their uniforms and their weapons. It's an expensive hobby. And they come out here on their own time to help keep this history alive. We'd also like to thank Park Manager Dustin Allen, Ranger Adam Dunham, and the staff here at the park, the Paynes Creek Preservation Alliance, and of course y'all for coming out here to the park and reliving this important moment of Florida history.
Come back in 2 months. I knew they were thieves. Loaded. More than whiskey. Are y'all loaded? I don't mean whiskey wine. Load your weapon. Shipco no drink whiskey. Yeah, you do. Shipco teetotaler. Okay, we're going to fire off a round. This is a salute to all of our fallen before us, our veterans, past and present, and everybody in the military is serving today. Take it away. Right about. Face. At your leisure. Ready. Hey, let's try to play. Fire. Are you clear? Cover. Arm.
You think he was a Seminole?
Right about. Face. Seminole. I'm not. Turn around and fire that direction. Seminole, turn around.
Okay.
Face that direction. There's always one in the crowd. Gonna fire on 3. On deck. They never learned. Hey. Only one went to boarding school. That's it.
Okay, give them all a hand again. Even the ones who can't shoot straight. If you'd like, at the entrance booth where you come in, the Paynes Creek Preservation Alliance is selling t-shirts. And 2 of our reenactors are featured on those t-shirts, and if you can track them down, they'll autograph them for you. Okay, you may now cross the barriers if you want to and approach these very frightening fighting men and talk with them. Oh, he looks dangerous. Take some pictures, learn about life in the time. And while you're doing that, Dave O'Brien is going to set up his equipment there, and we're going to have some period music from Dave O'Brien here as soon as he gets his equipment set up. Thank you again for coming out to our reenactment.
So in October, the fall wildflowers in Florida occur. So in our pine and flatwood areas, and our scrubby flatwoods, you get these beautiful pink flowers, pollinators.
So this goes on count, what she took last time. And she didn't let me live 2 more months.
Can you say? You wrap that down. Yeah, I'm done.
It looks pretty cool in here. I don't know how well you guys can see this. It doesn't look too dark on the screen. Awesome. Love this stuff. This is so cool. Boy, that is heavy. Okay, I'm gonna take a few pictures. Then we'll see what else there is to see.
I said, my little daughter, will I make her understand? Oh, parson, tell me quickly, will my soul pass without love? Then
I want to take a look.
Man, thank you. Imagine how hot it was, especially during the height of summer back in the day, being someplace like this. It must have been pretty warm. Kind of gives you a hint of how it was.
These spent rounds, we usually have to go back with grabbers and pick them up and stuff like that. I can either get some grabbers.
I'll take some pictures, of course, and I'll put it at the end of this video for you guys to see it better.
Stuff like that.
You have any questions about anything?
Can you just briefly explain, like, how the life was of a soldier, a typical day?
Well, what we have on display here, this is what a fur trapper for a trader, would have had at that time. Primarily as he just has his rifle, small hatchet, camp tools, and as he would go back out for 1-2 weeks at a time, he would then come back with all his furs to his camp where they would process all the leather for tanning purposes, and then they would prepare it to trade. But when they go out on these 1 or 2 week expeditions, they would just have basically just a backpack full of equipment. So minimalist, basically, carrying as little as possible, going for 1 or 2 weeks at a time.
Must have been a very lonely life.
Well, once they went out for 1 or 2 weeks, but they would come back to their base camp where his wife or camp helpers, kids, family would be with them to help them preparing the leather. So they would only be apart for just a couple weeks at a time.
How would they trap the animals?
A lot of times it was just with snares, like bending trees over, just a way to bait the traps, or they would have metal traps like you would see like in the cartoons. They'd have the giant bear traps, but just on a much smaller scale. They would trap just the small game, the rabbits, squirrels, raccoons, foxes, and then your larger animals, your deer, and we would probably be shooting them. You really wouldn't want to be shooting a squirrel with a .50 caliber rifle. Just the hole would be too large, and you destroy so much of the meat when you're hunting small game with such a large rifle. So they would prefer to trap them with something smaller, shoot them with like a smaller caliber gun.
What about alligators? How do they handle those?
I really don't know. I don't know about trapping the alligators or hunting them or whatever. That haven't looked into that.
So they probably didn't do too much with put that with the skins or anything like that.
I mean, they may have someone has an example of one of the tanned alligator skins around, but I don't think it was that popular.
What about bears?
I mean, they were hunted as well. I don't know how predominant they were during the time of the 1840s. But I know we still have them here in Florida, and we still have some hunts that go on, I think, way north, Panhandle, or the southern counties.
Very cool. What's your name?
James Wiley.
Hey, well, nice to meet you. Thank you. That's very, very interesting.
Thank you.
Can you explain that again?
So this is an example of just some other, like an evening cap. You you know, you'd see these more of like the old early Donald Duck cartoons as he's sitting there calling in and out of bed. This would be just one of the caps that they would see in just the evening time as they're lounging around. Another example would be this hat right here. The colors may not be accurate at the time, but if they were rather extravagant colors, arsenic would have been used in the dye to get these extravagant colors. And back in the 1800s, there's actually a term that was used, crazy as a Mad Hatter. And if you think of Alice in Wonderland, the character, the Mad Hatter, well, that was because the arsenic that was in his hat was bleaching into his skin, causing him to go crazy. So there is a term that actually is some truth to it, the Mad Hatter. But anyway, so these colors would have been available at the time if, you know, if arsenic was used, but it's pretty loud, and it's just what's the term I'm thinking of?
I'm assuming a brighter color would be more expensive.
Yes, it would have. More obnoxious, I guess you could say. Also in here, just the different style, obviously the hand-dipped candles that they would have made at the time, shooting bags, but again, the soldier wouldn't be walking around the woods with this box. He would just, this would be back in his base camp with just some more supplies that he would have had on hand.
What would he do during his downtime for leisure, other than playing games with the cards, of course?
Well, outside you have the targets there for the throwing of the knives and the hatchets, the tomahawks, they're also called. They would have the competitions. A lot of time these mountain men or these pioneers, these fur traders, they would get together these events just called rendezvous, and there they would have the competitions. They would trade all their equipment and, you know, gambling, fighting, whichever, but just a bunch of guys coming together, just camping out for 3 weeks just to trade everything. And but for fun and competition, they would throw the knives and tomahawks. And obviously, just the evening camp life and whatever, storytelling. And
what about music?
Well, I do know how to play the guitar, and I did bring it. It's not period correct, but it's just something I'll do, of course, because I'm camping, because I like to bring a guitar and sitting around a campfire at night. But the banjo would have been more period correct, mountain dulcimer, or also the fifes, tin whistles, penny whistle, I think they're
Is that
called.
the one you put between your teeth and you?
The jaw harp, Jew's harp, a couple different terms for it. But there were other instruments. I'm not too familiar with the instruments at that time. But obviously there were musicians. But that's about it.
Very cool, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Here's the infirmary. Soldiers camp right there. Yeah, he gave you a good idea in this place. It's pretty cool. They have a little sign here that says Seminole Camp, which I am going to check out. Bring you along with me, of course. It's fairly cool now out here, but just imagine how hot it would be during the summer. Do a little quick walk-through. And I think I'm going to head home. Okay. A quick little walk through the campus, small one, but definitely needs to be included. Well, that's it. I'm heading home. I liked it. It's a nice, interesting event. I liked the battle. It was pretty interesting. Gave a lot of local history, and everyone I met here was really nice. from the reenactors to the vendors to other people that worked here. It was really cool. I'm happy I came. I'm definitely gonna have to try it again next year. I think this is like the 13th annual one. I'll put a link below for some information when I get home. Alright. Any comments, questions, please let me know. I'm gonna get in the car before I blow away. It's becoming windy out here. Alright, see ya. Bye.
Stripes and bright